There is a quality that the most consistently powerful people across history have possessed, and it is not the quality the culture currently celebrates. It is not confidence in the performative sense, the loud self-assurance, the relentless optimism, the visible certainty that gets rewarded in job interviews and leadership seminars. It is not emotional detachment in the cold sense, the removed, unreachable quality of someone who has walled themselves off from the full range of human experience. It is something more precise and more paradoxical than either of those things. It is the capacity to feel everything, fully, deeply, without reduction, while allowing almost none of it to dictate behavior in real time. To be moved internally while remaining still externally. To carry the full weight of emotional experience without being visibly bent by it. This quality is rare. It is also, among the people who possess it, almost never discussed, because the people who have it understand intuitively that naming it is a form of diluting it. That the moment you explain your equanimity, you have made it a performance, and performance is the opposite of what it is. So the people who have it say very little about it, which is part of why it is so poorly understood by the people who do not have it and spend considerable energy trying to cultivate it through the wrong means. This essay is about that quality, about where it actually comes from, not from suppression, not from technique, not from willpower applied to the management of feeling. About why the people who seem most unbothered are, almost universally, the people who feel most deeply. About the specific psychological architecture that allows a human being to hold full emotional experience without being run by it. And about what this means for the way you currently relate to your own emotional life, because the implications are probably not what you expect. Let's begin with the most common misunderstanding, because it is widespread enough to be worth addressing directly. The misunderstanding is this: that the powerful person's stillness is the result of feeling less. That somewhere in their development they arrived at a capacity for reduced emotional reactivity through reduced emotional sensitivity, that they became less affected by the world in the way that a callus becomes less sensitive to pressure. This model is appealing because it suggests a clear path. If you want to be less reactive, become less sensitive. If you want to be less disturbed, care less. If you want to be less moved, feel less. The model is wrong, and not just slightly wrong, wrong in a direction that causes real and lasting damage to the people who pursue it. Because the attempt to reduce emotional sensitivity as a path to equanimity produces exactly what you would expect from suppression of any natural function. The feeling goes underground. It accumulates. It finds indirect expression in exactly the forms that the person was trying to escape. The explosive reaction at an unpredicted moment, the chronic low-grade irritability that is never connected to its source, the physical symptoms that carry the emotional load the conscious self refuses to bear, the sudden collapse at a moment of unexpected stress when the accumulated underground material finally exceeds the capacity of the suppression system to contain it. The person who has pursued equanimity through suppression does not feel less. They feel the same amount underground, where it is no longer available to them for information but is fully available to the unconscious for expression. They have traded the discomfort of feeling openly for the discomfort of being ruled by what they refuse to feel. The trade is almost always worse. The people who actually possess the quality we are describing did not arrive at it through feeling less. They arrived at it through a different route entirely, and the route is the opposite of suppression. They arrived at it through learning to feel more completely. Not more expressively, more completely. The distinction is essential. Complete feeling means the emotion moves through its full cycle, from arrival to peak to resolution, without being interrupted either by expression or by suppression. The feeling arrives. It is noticed. It is felt in the body without being immediately converted into either behavior or avoidance. And then, because it has been allowed to complete its cycle, it resolves not into nothing but into information, into a considered understanding of what the emotion is pointing at, rather than the raw urgency of an emotion that was never allowed to run its course. This is not a natural capacity for most people. It has to be developed, and it has to be developed precisely against the two opposed pressures that most cultures apply to emotional experience. The pressure to express, which interrupts the completion of the feeling by converting it into behavior before it can process itself, and the pressure to suppress, which interrupts the completion of the feeling by pushing it underground before it can process itself. Both interruptions produce the same outcome, an emotion that has not completed its cycle and therefore cannot resolve into information. An emotion that remains active underground or on the surface, interfering with the person's capacity to think clearly, act accurately, and be present in the situation that is actually in front of them. The capacity to feel completely, to stay with the full arrival of the emotion until it resolves into information, is the foundation of everything else we are going to discuss. It is not the only thing that produces the quality we are examining, but nothing else we are going to discuss is possible without it, because the architecture of equanimity is built on a foundation of processed emotion, not suppressed emotion, processed emotion. And the difference between the two is the difference between a reservoir that is full and functioning and a dam that is full and cracking. If this is landing somewhere useful, take a second now and subscribe. The work we do here goes to the layer beneath the surface conversation about emotions, the layer where the actual mechanisms live and where the actual work can be done. Hit the bell while you are there. Now let's build the architecture. The first element of the architecture is what might be called the observer position. It is a specific relationship to your own emotional experience that is neither the immersed position, fully inside the feeling, identified with it, being it, nor the detached position, watching the feeling from a distance that prevents it from being fully felt. The observer position is inside the feeling and simultaneously aware of being inside the feeling. You are feeling the anger and you know you are feeling the anger. You are feeling the grief and you know you are feeling the grief. The simultaneity is the key, because the awareness does not diminish the feeling. The feeling is full, the emotion is completely present. But the awareness prevents the identification that turns the feeling into behavior. The anger is present and fully felt. You are not, in that moment, your anger. You are the one who is feeling the anger. The distinction is small and the difference is everything. This observer position is not achieved by effort in the moment. It is developed through a practice that, over time, builds the specific inner muscle that allows simultaneous feeling and witnessing. The practice is simple to describe and genuinely difficult to sustain. It is the practice of turning your attention, deliberately and repeatedly, to the present moment experience of your own interior, not to analyze it, not to judge it, not to fix it, not to express it, but simply to notice it. What is happening in the body right now? What the quality of the feeling is, where it lives physically, how it is moving or not moving. The practice of noticing, done consistently over months and years, builds the interior space that the observer position requires. The space between the stimulus and the response that the great strategic traditions have always identified as the location of human freedom. Consider, historically, the leaders who navigated the most dangerous situations with the greatest consistency of result. Not the ones who acted most decisively in the moment. Decisive action is easy and frequently wrong. The ones whose decisions, reviewed from the position of outcome, were most accurate over time. The pattern, when you look closely enough, is consistent. These were people who could be under extraordinary pressure, registering that pressure fully, feeling the urgency and the fear and the anger and the grief that the situation genuinely warranted, and still thinking, still accessing the full range of their cognitive capacity, still reading the situation accurately rather than reading the situation through the distorting lens of an emotion that had not yet been allowed to complete its cycle. The neurological explanation for why this is so difficult is now well understood. The emotional activation system and the executive function system in the human brain are in competition for resources. When the emotional activation system is fully engaged, when the fight or flight response is running, when strong emotion is present and unprocessed, the resources available to the executive function system are measurably reduced. The person under strong unprocessed emotional activation is, in a literal neurological sense, less intelligent in that moment than they are when the emotional system is not competing for the same resources. This is not a character flaw. It is a design feature, and in the evolutionary context for which it was designed, it was the right design. Acute threat requires fast, simple response, not nuanced analysis. The problem is that the modern high-stakes situations that most people face are not acute threats requiring fast, simple response. They are complex situations requiring accurate assessment. And the emotional activation system does not know the difference. It responds to the perceived threat of a high-stakes negotiation the same way it would respond to a predator in the grass, with full activation, with maximum resource allocation to the survival response, and with the consequent reduction in the cognitive capacity that the negotiation actually required. The people who consistently perform well under pressure have learned, through practice, through exposure, through the slow development of the observer position, to feel the emotional activation without being fully captured by it. They feel the urgency. They do not become the urgency. They feel the threat. They do not become the threat response. And because they are feeling the emotion without being fully captured by it, the emotional activation and the executive function system are no longer in full competition. The emotion is present and being processed. The thinking is happening simultaneously, and the decisions that emerge from that state are of a categorically different quality than the decisions that emerge from either suppression, which produces the brittleness of the overloaded dam, or from full immersion, which produces the imprecision of the person who is their emotion rather than the person who is feeling their emotion. The second element of the architecture is what might be called the long view. It is the capacity, cultivated over time, to hold any present moment situation inside a frame that is larger than the situation itself. Every situation, however urgent it feels in the moment, is also one moment in a longer story. The career setback is one episode in a career. The relationship rupture is one event in a life. The public failure is one data point in a trajectory that is still being written. The long view does not diminish the genuine pain of what is happening in the present. It holds the pain in a frame that prevents the pain from becoming the entire world. The long view is not easy to access in moments of acute distress, which is precisely why it has to be cultivated in moments of relative calm. The people who have it did not arrive at it in the middle of a crisis. They arrived at it through the repeated practice of placing the present moment in its larger context, over and over in ordinary moments, until the practice became a default perspective rather than a deliberate effort. And when the crisis arrived, as crises always arrive, the default perspective was available. Not easily, not without effort, but available. And available was enough. There is a specific form of the long view that the strategic traditions across cultures have identified as the most powerful form, and it is the one that is most counterintuitive from within the modern framework. It is the view from the end, not in the morbid sense, but in the clarifying sense. The practice of asking, with genuine seriousness, what this situation will look like from the end of the life, from the position of a person who can see the whole arc. What will matter from that position about what is happening right now? What will not matter at all? What action taken now will have been the right one when the entire story can be read? The view from the end does not produce passivity, produces precision. It strips away the enormous quantity of what feels urgent but is not important, and leaves visible the small quantity of what is actually worth expending force on. And precision in the expenditure of force is one of the most reliable signatures of genuine power. The third element of the architecture is the most important and the most difficult to discuss, because it sounds simple and is, in practice, one of the hardest things a human being can do. It is the practice of feeling what is true rather than what is preferable, of letting the emotional truth of a situation arrive without immediately reshaping it into something more comfortable or more actionable or more consistent with the self-image you have been maintaining, of being willing again and again to feel things that do not fit the narrative. Grief where you expected to feel nothing, fear where you expected to feel confidence, longing where you expected to feel contentment, love where you expected to feel only competence. The truth of the emotional interior is frequently inconvenient. It does not arrive according to schedule or in forms that are easy to integrate. It arrives when it arrives, in the form it takes, without regard for your preferred self-image or your current commitments or the version of yourself you have been presenting to the world. The people who possess the quality we began with, who feel everything and show nothing, are not the people who have successfully managed to feel only the convenient things. They are the people who have developed the willingness to feel whatever arrives, including the inconvenient, the contradictory, and the humbling. And paradoxically, this willingness to feel the full truth of the interior is what produces the stillness on the exterior. Because the stillness is not the result of having nothing to feel. The stillness is the result of having processed what arrived before it accumulated into the compressed urgency that forces its way out through behavior. The person who feels what is true in real time, as it arrives, does not accumulate the backlog that produces the explosive reaction, the chronic irritability, the sudden collapse. They are, in a very real sense, current with their own interior. And the currency, the not having a backlog, is what the exterior world experiences as equanimity. There is a historical figure whose approach to this captures the principle as clearly as any example I have encountered. A military commander facing a situation of genuine crisis. Resources depleted, options narrowing, the people around him losing composure. Everyone in the situation was feeling the same objective pressure. The difference between him and the others was not that he felt less. By all accounts, he felt the situation as acutely as any of them. The difference was that he was not behind on his feeling. He had not been accumulating unexpressed emotion throughout the campaign. He had been processing what arrived as it arrived. The fear, the uncertainty, the grief of losses, the anger at circumstances, and the processing had kept him current. So when the acute crisis arrived, he did not also have to manage a backlog. The full force of his attention was available for the situation. He was not splitting it between what was happening and what had been happening for months and had never been addressed. He was simply here, feeling this, thinking about this, acting on this. And the quality of the thinking and the quality of the acting reflected the full availability of a mind that was not also managing an interior emergency. This is the practical argument for the emotional work that most people, in the modern context, associate with weakness. The journaling, the therapy, the meditative practice, the willingness to sit with what is uncomfortable rather than redirect it into productivity. These are not self-indulgent. They are not alternatives to effectiveness. They are the specific practices that keep a person current with their interior and therefore available fully without the competing drain of the backlog for whatever requires their attention. The person who skips this work is not stronger for having skipped it. They are more vulnerable in the specific way that the overloaded dam is more vulnerable than the flowing river. The dam looks more impressive, until it does not. Now let's name the thing that makes all of this so consistently difficult in the current moment, because without naming it, the practical guidance will not be enough. The thing is the culture's relationship to emotional experience in men specifically, and in high-performing people generally. The culture rewards, with enormous consistency, the performed version of the quality we are describing. The not reacting that is actually suppression. The calmness that is actually numbness. The strength that is actually a very large and well-maintained dam. These are rewarded because they are visible, because they are easily read as confidence and capability, because they function well enough in the short term that the long-term cost remains invisible until it becomes catastrophic. The actual quality, the feeling everything and showing nothing that comes from processing rather than suppressing, is not visible in the same way. It does not announce itself. It does not produce the same immediate social rewards. And the practices that develop it are often practices that the culture marks as soft, as therapy speak, as not serious work for serious people. The man who journals is marked differently than the man who goes to the gym. The executive who engages with their emotional interior is marked differently than the executive who engages with their quarterly results. The stigma is real, and it has real effects on who does the work and who does not, and therefore on who develops the actual quality and who develops the convincing simulation of it, and therefore on who has access to the real power and who is running on a reserve that is measurably depleting. Naming the stigma is not the same as dissolving it. The stigma exists in the culture and in the institutions and in the habits of perception that the culture has built, and it will not dissolve quickly. What dissolves more quickly, because it is interior and the interior is where you actually live, is your own relationship to the stigma. Your own acceptance of the premise that the emotional work is weakness. Your own participation in the marking of people who do it as less serious than people who do not. Because as long as you participate in that marking, even internally, you are participating in the maintenance of the very dynamic that is keeping you from the work. And the work is, in the end, the only thing that produces the quality. Not the technique, not the framework, not the intellectual understanding that you now have from this essay. The work, the repeated, unglamorous, genuinely difficult practice of feeling what is true in the body until it resolves into information. Done consistently over time without the guarantee of visible reward. The work. The people who have done it are the people you recognize when you meet them. The ones who seem unbothered not because nothing bothers them, but because they are not behind on being bothered. The ones who are present not because they have no interior life, but because their interior life is not conducting an emergency that requires their entire attention. The ones who feel everything and show nothing, not because the showing has been suppressed, but because the feeling has been completed, and what is complete does not urgently demand expression. It simply informs, and the person informed by the full truth of their own interior, available to the present moment without the drag of the backlog, acting from the clarity of processed rather than accumulated emotion, that person is the specific and rare thing that every tradition, in every culture, in every century, has recognized as genuine power. If something in this reached a place the usual conversation about strength does not reach, do something now. Comment with these words: I feel it all. Just that. So I can see how many of us are doing the real work rather than the performance of it. And give this a like if it moved something, not for me, but as a small acknowledgement that you heard what was being said underneath the saying. The next video takes this further into the specific relationship between emotional depth and strategic intelligence, and why the people who feel most accurately also, consistently, think most clearly. It is the piece that connects everything we have been building. I will see you there.